It never occurred to me that I would feel alienated in my kitchen. But there I was, drinking lukewarm tea from a cracked mug at the side of the table, my table, while the folks I called family laughed on without me. The only plan was to have a family meal. When my mother contacted me 2 days prior, she mentioned this. Just a casual thing, she remarked. Come on over, we're all getting together. Seeing you would be pleasant. So I arrived. A bottle of wine was with me. She once told me she looked exquisite in a light blue dress. Despite not wanting to smile, I applied lipstick. I parked outside the house where I grew up after driving 2 hours from my apartment downtown, and for a little minute, I allowed myself to hope that this time, perhaps, things might be different. They weren't. It seemed as though I didn't exist when I first entered. Lily, my younger sister, was the first to greet me, but merely to inquire as to whether I had brought the wine chilled. Without truly looking at me, my mother kissed my cheek for a few seconds. Hello, my stepfather said from behind his phone. Nobody inquired about how I was doing. Nobody inquired about how my previous gallery show went, how my job was doing, or whether I was seeing anyone. They simply walked around me, as if I were furniture. Uncertain about where to place the wine, I stood in the corridor for a while. The counter in the kitchen was crowded. The refrigerator was stocked. To make way for a cake with the words, "To New Beginnings," written in pink cursive, someone had emptied the area where we typically kept serving dishes. What that signified was unknown to me. Nobody informed me. I eventually located a place at the dining table's far end. This wasn't the usual spot. They had taken that, of course, by Lily. As usual, she was glowing. Her hair was curled, her clothing was tight, and her laughter was loud. She effortlessly owned the room, as she always did. When she spoke, her ability to draw listeners in made everything she said seem worthy of emphasis, even though it didn't. And when my mom gazed at Lily, she shone like a beacon, put a hand to hers. She adjusted her necklace. They chuckled and whispered things in her ear as if they were best friends rather than mother and daughter. I became aware that I had not been offered a drink when I sat across from them. No one had inquired about my food preferences. Not even a proper seat had been assigned to me. One of the foldable chairs from the garage was the only one left for me. We used it for card games or for unexpected visits from the neighbors. Every time I changed my weight, it swayed a little. Then Lily got up and held up a glass. She smiled and said, "Thank you all for coming. I wanted to share something very special with you." Everyone fell silent. "I'm returning," she declared. People gasped. "Let's toast." There was a clap. My mom stood with tears in her eyes. She said, "I'm going to live here," as she glanced around the table, alongside us. Congratulations erupted around the table. I blinked. What? I turned to face my mom. She looked away from me. I gave Lily a look. She only grinned, her eyes glimmering with contentment. In an attempt to prevent my voice from breaking, I cleared my throat. "What do you mean that she's going to move in here?" My mom continued to avoid eye contact with me. "We had already discussed it. Doesn't it just make sense?" "Discussed it?" With a racing heart, I repeated. "When? Not with me?" Lily gave a small laugh. "Really, it's not a huge problem. All I need is the room to myself while I work things out. In any case, this house is too large for only mom and dad. This residence, my home. After my father passed away, I had been making mortgage payments on the house for 2 years because mom was too busy to pay the bills. I paid property taxes on the residence. I painted the house again, renovated, kept up. The roof was repaired after it started to leak. When the furnace broke, it was covered. And suddenly, it was too large for them alone? "Wait," I said softly. "What am I meant to do?" Quiet. My mother gave me a look as if I had asked an absurd question. "You have a space of your own in the city, my love." "There, I pay my rent," I said. "I don't own it." She shrugged as if it were clear that this house was always intended for the family. "It's about love, not about possessions, about acting in your sister's best interests." My sister, the girl in gold, the person who drifted from job to job, boyfriend to boyfriend, crisis to crisis after graduating from college in California, always landing lightly because someone else paid the price. She was now on her way home, to my house, and I was expected to make room, not asked to vanish, once more. Slightly above a whisper, I continued, I helped pay for this house, while nobody else was able to. This area was kept together by me. My mother responded, You did what any good daughter would do, too quickly. Naturally, we are appreciative, but Lily needs this right now. I gazed at her, at the mother of my offspring, at the woman who used to tell me I was brave and kiss my skinned knees, who used to tell me I was unique and braid my hair before school. She was no longer someone I recognized. My ears were starting to ring. What came next is a mystery to me. All I can recall is standing up slowly, with caution. My legs felt unsteady, as if they were no longer mine. Without waiting for permission, I said, I need some air. I entered the garden through the rear entrance. The air was cold and biting. The trees had lost their leaves. My skin was bitten by the wind. Something collapsed inside of me as I stood beneath the maple tree my father had planted when I was born. It wasn't noisy. There was no drama. It's just a quiet break, a part of me that gave up at last. I had been trying to be the good daughter for years. I strived to be the helpful one. This individual is considered to be powerful and influential. He was the one who remained safe from harm, the person who comprehended. However, I came to the following realization while I was by myself in my boyhood backyard. I had never had somebody do the same for me. Additionally, it's possible that they never would. That's when everything changed. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. I simply made a decision. And I had a strategy for what I was going to do next, something none of them anticipated. My mother had been subtly preparing me for the role of the disposable daughter even before she asked me to give up my house for my sister. One significant betrayal wasn't the beginning of it. Birthdays were the first. I requested a science kit the year I turned 9. 2 months prior, on a list I handed her, I had written it in unsteady handwriting. I posted the note on the refrigerator. I spoke about it constantly. She purchased a pink jumper for me that had glitter on the arms. In the same year, Lily received a telescope. She didn't request one at all. She squealed as if she had been given the moon itself when I watched her open it. I wondered how I'd gotten lost in my own revelry as I stood there clutching my scratchy jumper. That trend remained constant. She always received more kudos. There has been an increase in the number of second chances, more tenderness. And me? I was given responsibilities. I was reprimanded for not keeping an eye on Lily when she shattered the vase in the hallway. I was asked, Why didn't you say anything when she skipped school? I was instructed to console her when she sobbed. I was told to be strong when I sobbed. I was, too. One discovered how to grin while feeling a knot in my throat. Instead of taking family photos, I learned how to hold a camera. I discovered that there was a hierarchy of affection in our home, and I was somewhere below the furniture. I tried, though. I tried, God. I put more effort into my studies. Arrived home early. I cleaned the house without being asked. Remained silent when I wanted to yell. I reasoned that people would notice me if I were sufficiently flawless, submissive, and helpful. They didn't. Rather, they celebrated each minor victory as though Lily had created the sun. We had a dinner party when she got her first job. My mother gave me a shopping list and said, You can pick up the cake, right? When I graduated early from college, no party was in attendance. There was no candle burning, no glasses clinking. I drove home alone, eating a store-bought cake and trying not to notice how empty I felt. And things worsened after Dad passed away. The only person who saw me was him, always quietly. He was never very showy, but I can recall him waiting for me to get home from my part-time jobs. How he would inquire about my day while brewing tea. How, as if they were works of art, Dad would tape my designs to the garage wall. It felt like someone had extinguished the final light in the home when we lost him. I took the initiative, because I believed I was supposed to do that. I assisted with the bills, together with groceries. I decided to stay and check on Mom instead of moving out. Every month, when things were tough, I contributed money. I used my hands to assist with fixing the back porch. Even when Lily didn't call, I stayed. I wasn't requested to perform such tasks. However, nobody also stopped me. And I got no gratitude. When Lily needed a place to crash, money for a deposit, or consolation after another split, she effortlessly returned to our life. They were always happy to see her. I was there all the time. One night in particular comes to mind. I was 19. Outside, a storm was raging. We all sat in the living room with candles lighted on the coffee table because the house was dark due to the power outage. Lily claimed to have been in a disagreement with her partner and had nowhere else to go after arriving home abruptly, drenched and dramatic, as if she were a broken doll. Mom sat with her, cradling her in blankets and petting her hair. I brewed a cup of tea on the gas stove and offered it to her. She accepted it without giving me a look. I brewed it, but my mother never even admitted it. I listened to them giggle in the adjacent room while I lay awake in bed that night. In my own life, I felt like a visitor. I stayed, nevertheless. Because it seemed like giving up to leave. Because I believed that someone would eventually say, if I remained long enough, gave enough, and loved enough, we recognize you. You are important. However, that lunch day confirmed something I had long suppressed. They failed to notice me. They didn't. And the reality? They might not have wanted to. Since recognizing me would entail recognizing their disregard, my family members weren't prepared to handle that mirror either. I happened to run into someone at the art gallery, where I worked a few months prior to the lunch. Cora was her name. Her eyes were piercing and friendly, and her hair had silver streaks. She was older, perhaps in her 50s. She asked thoughtful questions as she moved slowly through the museum, giving me the impression that I was being heard. She questioned me at the end of the show if I was the creator of the mixed media piece at the back, which was composed of thread and broken porcelain. Startled, I nodded. Most folks didn't go to that one. It's lovely, she remarked softly. Sad, but complete. I blinked. My work had never been discussed in such a way. We may have spoken for 15 minutes. What inspired me? She said. I informed her that it was difficult. She gave a nod. It's always the best bits. She gave me a card before she went. I work for a nonprofit in the arts. This autumn, we are seeking a leader for a community project. It's meaningful, even though it's not glamorous. You ought to submit an application. I nearly forgot about the card after putting it in my coat pocket. However, I took it out once more later that evening, after my mother had gone to bed and the house's lights had gone out. I noticed for the first time in a long time. Not by my relatives, however, by someone who didn't care to look twice. And something changed within me. It wasn't big, hardly perceptible. However, it was sufficient. Sufficient to pose a query I had never let myself ask. What if I gave up on finding love in a place where I was only ever utilized? What if I stopped reducing myself to accommodate other people? What if I went? The answers were not with me. Not quite yet. But that was just the beginning alone in my room, quiet. The first hint of something I hadn't experienced in years, potentiality. And I knew deep down that I couldn't continue living this way. No more. I didn't leave in a big show. I didn't yell, demand explanations, or pack my bags. I simply stopped being present. I informed my mother that I was occupied with work after that meal. I had gallery displays, back-to-back deadlines, and late hours. It was all truth. However, the simpler truth, the one I chose not to reveal, was I had given up trying. Her voice was light and informal when she called for the first time following that day. Lily is choosing new drapes for the bedroom upstairs. Would you like to contribute? I blinked at the ridiculousness as I gazed at my phone. The bedroom is upstairs, my sleeping quarters, the one in which I was raised, the one that I repainted, the one with the freshly applied beige that still just barely shows the hand-drawn stars. I didn't answer. Is everything okay? She texted. Yes, I said, simply busy. That was the end of it. From the other side of the quiet, I could just hear her shrug. It's interesting how when you stop giving someone everything, they no longer need you. Not even my sister texted. Not once. She didn't inquire about my well-being, the reason behind my abrupt departure that day, or my thoughts on her relocating back in. She recently moved in. I also gave her permission. Since I wasn't going to make things right this time, I let them do whatever they wanted. I had no intention of intervening, mediating, or calming the situation. Let the mess be cleaned up by them. I started applying for everything at work: grants, fellowships, opportunities for freelance work. I located Cora's card and submitted a brief proposal for her program in community arts. I was not expecting a response. I thought she was saying something courteous to everyone. However, she called 2 weeks later. Your idea was fantastic, she said. For our summer project, would you be willing to serve as team leader? I almost dropped my phone. The word lead had never been used in reference to me. I had never been asked what I wanted to construct. Someone offered me space for the first time in my life and trusted that I would know what to do with it. Yes, I replied. A few weeks into the endeavor, my mother contacted me again one day. As always, I need your help with something, she remarked. I had a doctor's appointment, and Lily's vehicle battery died. I can't, I interrupted her. A pause occurred. Can't or won't? She inquired. Both, I said. One more pause. Like it was a compliment, she murmured softly. You've always been so dependable. I was, I answered. Perhaps that was the issue. Without saying goodbye, she hung up. It hurt. It hurt more than I had expected. However, it also felt essential, because I had said no for the first time. The world did not end either. I began to pay more attention to the quiet in our connection than the chatter. Nobody contacted me to inquire about my well-being. I received no dinner invitations. Nobody openly questioned my absence from Lily's birthday celebration. They simply adapted. I felt as though I had never been there before. I also detested how simple it was for them to remove me. However, another component? It felt liberating. Then came the moment that broke the last of the illusion. I was delivering some community center supplies. The air was sticky and warm. Outside, children were drawing on the pavement as someone's speaker was playing music. I froze as soon as I entered the kitchen through the back door to get a bottle of water. There was Lily. I'm laughing with one of the coordinators of the initiative. I felt sick to my stomach. She wasn't supposed to be there. The idea had never piqued her curiosity. She never questioned what I was working on, never even admitted it. However, she was there, charming and sweet, inquiring about the center, finances, and how wonderful it must be to build something so important for the community. Unsure if she spotted me, I took a hesitant step forward. She did. She continued to smile. As though we had just met at the grocery store, she said, Hey, I was unaware of your presence today. I said, maintaining a steady tone. This is my project. Yes, exactly. She let out a small laugh. I was just dropping in. I wanted to see if I could help. Check to see if I may be of any assistance. I remained silent. My sister has always been the quiet one, she added, turning back to the coordinator. However, she is extremely dependable. She is really the foundation of everything. It was supposed to sound giving, kindly. However, I only heard a dismissal that was backhanded, as if she were the vase that everyone adored and I were the solid shelf. Without saying another thing, I left. I sat in my flat that evening and gazed at the ceiling. They would never alter. My work would constantly be twisted into theirs. I put effort into their reflection. I turned my quiet into agreement, and I allowed them for years. However, it is no longer the case. I created a new savings account the following day. I put all of my money into it. I changed my email's password. I secured my files, made backup disks. After that, I did something I had never before permitted myself to do. I visited a lawyer. Only a consultation took place. I wanted to know what my options were, as well as the house, my previous payments, and the actual workings of ownership. The attorney paid attention, made notes, asked insightful questions that helped me see how much I had contributed without taking precautions. He stated, You might be surprised to learn how many rights you have, and I let out a breath. Not because I was yet to have a plan, but because I had power for the first time, not above them, but above myself. My mother left me a voicemail later that week. You appeared unhappy, Lily said. I hope nothing is getting to you personally. All we're doing is our best. I removed it. Since I had spent years doing my best, they had also taken offense. Everything had been taken. They still expected me to give more and smile, but me like that? She had left. And the one who replaced her? She had only just begun. I kept my move a secret from everyone, not even my best friend at work. Not Cora, not the neighbors. Little by little, I packed. I packed only one drawer. There is only one bookcase in the room. One wardrobe corner. Every night after work, I would remove another picture frame. I would remove one more painting each night, slide it into a box after wrapping it in brown paper. I refrained from crying. I didn't stay. I simply proceeded steadily and slowly, like if I had said my goodbyes ages ago. It was liberating in some way. That flat has served as both a haven and a holding facility for me for years. Limbo. It was turning into a launch pad now. About half an hour outside the city, I discovered a little guest home. It had a porch swing, 2 bedrooms, and a crooked mailbox, but it was mine. It wasn't fancy. All mine. I silently signed the lease and made the upfront payment for the first 3 months. The address was unknown. That was the idea. I had my own area. There was no shadow in sight. There were no footsteps behind me. Nobody snuck in to steal what I had created. Only me and tranquility. Things were changing at the gallery as well. Following a morning meeting, Cora drew me aside. Not rudely, she said. You seem different. I am, I answered. She grinned. Excellent! That is the result of ceasing to request permission. For days, that statement lingered in my chest. I ceased to inquire, for confirmation, to get attention. I apologize, and as soon as I stopped asking, I became aware of how little they had ever contributed. I drove by my childhood house one Saturday. The garden had a new appearance. The porch was filled with pink flower pots. A brand new mailbox adorned the porch. A gesture of welcome that had never been there before. The touch of Lily, of course. Things that looked wonderful in photos always appealed to her. For a few minutes, I parked across the street with the windows up and the engine running, observing. That's when I noticed it. The lights were on in the living room. Lily and Mom were sitting inside, both of them smiling at something on TV while drinking from wine glasses. Of course, I was unable to hear anything. However, their body language was sufficient. They were all okay. They were more than satisfactory. They hadn't hesitated to replace me, and I was finished lamenting that. I pulled out a folder that I had been hiding for months that evening. There were screenshots of text messages, pictures of receipts, and documents of bank transfers. The evidence included all the money I had contributed to the house over the years. I didn't question the deed since my name wasn't on it. Family, I believed, meant trust. I knew better now. I was advised by my lawyer that this would not be simple. However, it is feasible. And now? It was time now. I sent him a comprehensive email, each and every file, document, and screenshot. 2 voicemails were left by my mother. The first one was amiable. I haven't heard from you, honey. I just wanted to check in with you. You haven't been around the gallery lately, according to Lily. Let's get together soon, shall we? I didn't respond. Late at night, the second one arrived. You're where? She inquired. You can't ignore your family indefinitely. This is unhealthy. As the message concluded, I gazed at the phone. Wholesome. And from her, what a word. On a Tuesday, the following minor twist occurred. My mom gave the gallery a call. One of the interns observed. Your mom sounded stressed. After I returned from a mural session I was hosting at the community center. She was curious about your whereabouts. Mentioned that you needed assistance with a payment problem. Payment problem. I grinned. The initial request for the house's papers had been submitted by the attorney. Just a formal request for record disclosure, not yet a lawsuit. The notification must have reached her. The fact that I wasn't bluffing had now dawned on them. Furthermore, they were unaware of my previous movement. For the first time in months, Lily gave me a call that night. I didn't respond. She gave another call. And once more. She left a message on the 10th missed call. She spoke in a very low voice. Look, I have no idea what's happening. Could we please have a conversation if something has upset you? My sister is you. This is becoming unmanageable. I gave it a listen once. After then, it was erased. Because she wanted to speak now? Following years of quiet? After calling it sisterhood and stomping all over me like a doormat? After removing my mother and my house and pretending I was inconspicuous? No. She could now enjoy the same quiet that she had denied me for years. That week, I began painting once more. For the gallery, no. It's not intended for the office environment, not for a project. Only for me. I stayed up late, splattering paint on canvas as if it were my first time using a brush. They were bold strokes, sloppy, lovely. For the first time, I had the impression that I was making things out of freedom rather than suffering. It wasn't retaliation. Not quite yet. However, power was just getting started. There was one last communication from my mother. A message. No matter what, please don't do something that we can't undo. I spent a lot of time looking at that sentence. It was laden with irony. We? Recover? Never once had they turned back to see what I had given up to keep the family together. And they were scared now? Excellent. Allow them to experience that. Allow them to sit in a state of uncertainty, unsure of what lies ahead. For I had changed from being the daughter who requested permission. The woman with the evidence was me. And I had only just begun. Everything was the same when I returned to the house that day. The walls are the same cream color. The same framed family pictures that, for some reason, never featured me. The same light lavender and bleach smell. However, something had changed. Me. Months ago, when I stood here trembling with betrayal and confusion, I was a different woman. Being courteous wasn't my purpose. Peacemaking was not my purpose. I came to put a stop to the performance. In order to clear the air, my mother had requested a brief talk. I concurred. However, I wasn't just going to chat. My heels echoed on the hardwood floor as I entered. An expensive jumper and that same glossy grin Lily always wore when she needed anything were already on her, and she was sitting on the couch with her legs crossed. My mother appeared nearly anxious as she stood by the hearth with her hands clenched. She said, "Thank you for coming." I gave a nod but remained silent. She indicated the armchair. I didn't sit down. I remained silent and unflappable, like a judge awaiting a decision. It was Lily who spoke first. "Look, I realize that things have become strange. Mom has been upset, and you have been aloof. All we wanted to do was speak, similar to sisters." I cocked my head. "Sisters, perhaps?" I asked quietly. She blinked. "Indeed, I am aware that we have had disagreements, but," I answered calmly, "you moved into my house without asking. Then when I stopped turning up, they pretended to be shocked." She gave an eye roll. "Please, come on. You were hardly residing here." I was footing the bill. The room fell silent as the words fell. Nobody answered. My mom cleared her throat. "We didn't mean to hurt you, sweetie. Simply put, Lily needed assistance, and I clarified, you mean she needed my help, as usual." "Stop being dramatic," Lily whispered. I inhaled deeply before reaching into my bag. I took a folder out and gave it to my mom. "What is this?" she inquired. "Documentation," I said. "Of all the money I paid for this house. I paid all of the utility bills. I had to pay for each repair myself. Each tax return that has my name on it." She appeared pallid. "What do you want to say too?" Lily lost her temper. Finally, I looked at her, really looked at her. "Legally speaking, this house is no longer under your authority," I stated evenly. My mother's fingers were shaking when she opened the folder. Her eyes widened as she turned the pages. I went on to say that I transferred the deed last week. The house is now completely mine. Lily's jaw fell agape. "You're not serious," she said. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I continued. "I spoke with a lawyer months ago, gathered everything, silently, with caution. I held off on applying for sole ownership based on contribution and tenancy until I had sufficient documentation." "That is not possible," Lily yelled. I said, "I already did." I could hear the clock ticking on the wall since the room was so silent. Slowly, as if her knees were giving out, my mother sat down. She murmured, "You did this behind our backs." "No," I replied. "After you decided I didn't matter, I did it." Something filled her eyes, perhaps dread, perhaps remorse, perhaps the simple knowledge that I was no longer the loyal daughter she could rely on to tidy up the mess. I gave Lily a look. "You've got 30 days to vacate." "You can't be serious," she said in a high-pitched voice. "I have nowhere to go," I gave a shrug. "Perhaps you ought to have considered it before evicting me from my own house." She got to her feet. "You lack compassion." "No," I replied. "At last, I've stopped pleading for scraps." My mom's voice trembled as she reached out. The family was meant to live in this house. I looked over at her. "No, Mother, it was intended for your conception of family. One was centered on Lily. I was never excellent enough to be noticed, but I was good enough to cover the expenses. She didn't dispute it. The worst thing was that she simply averted her gaze. I looked around the room one last time. You taught me that I would get love if I was quiet and helpful. However, the only reward I received was silence, disrespect. Additionally, I had a front row seat to my own loss. I grabbed my bag, and I finished it. I made my way to the door. I turned around before I went. Oh, and I added something else. They raised their eyes. Next week, I will be interviewed on national television. The interview will focus on the mural project, regarding my job, about taking back your personal space when others tell you you don't belong. They didn't say anything. I added, perhaps you'll catch it. Packing if you're not too busy. After that, I left. And now, I didn't turn around. The ripple effects were evident very quickly. Lily shared a mysterious statement on her Instagram story the day after I delivered the last documents. Because they have already reached their lowest point, some people enjoy watching others fail. No name, no specifics. But I was aware that it was about me. Half of those who knew us did the same. Our extended family were enthralled with the story by the end of the week. I was instantly remembered by cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Is everything okay between you and your mom? One aunt texted. Another message. Is something wrong with your sister? She appears upset. I didn't answer, since it had nothing to do with gossip. Truth was at issue. Furthermore, the truth had already come to light. First, my mom tried damage control. She gave me another call, but this time her voice was cautious and quiet. In the voicemail, she stated, I just want to talk. She did not intend to argue, simply to comprehend. I gave the message 3 listens. After then, it was erased. Not because I was angry, uncertain. I didn't have to justify myself for the first time in my life. When I was crumbling beneath the weight of unspoken expectations, she showed little concern. After I paid her mortgage, I sobbed by myself in that flat, but she didn't call. I pleaded with her to be seen, but she ignored me. What's the point of giving her my explanation now? Allow her to sit in the same quiet that I had endured for years. A neighbor informed me 2 weeks later that Lily had temporarily moved in with a friend. Apparently, she didn't have enough saved to pay for her own rent. The irony was deep. This was the 3rd couch in 5 days for the woman who had labeled me dull for saving instead of experiencing the present. I had no sympathy for her, not because I wanted to hurt her, but the only language she ever understood was suffering. Boundaries had never sounded to her, only repercussions. And now she had one at last. What about my mom? In the voicemails, her voice began to change. Less regret, more desperate. She responded, You can't just cut us off like this. We remain family, still related. It's funny how, when you cease fulfilling your part in their script, they seek that term. When you no longer act as the assistant, you are the one who makes the necessary adjustments. The silent person who accepts even when it hurts. They realize that you are related at that point. However, I had discovered something significant. Without respect, family is only a matter of proximity. Furthermore, being close doesn't equate to belonging. My sleep improved, deeper, longer. The type of sleep in which you don't wake up, anticipating remorse or checking your phone. I painted once more. Each day, to breathe, not merely to produce, to digest. Inheritance was the title of my most recent work. It was big, chaotic. It was beautiful in the most broken sense of the word. White brushstrokes overlapped with shards of gold and red, each signifying something that had been passed down but wasn't worth retaining. I displayed it in the main window of the gallery. People paused to gaze. A few people sobbed. It feels just like that, a woman muttered. I also felt noticed. Not for being responsible or quiet, but for being truthful. A few weeks later, there was a little celebration to mark the completion of the mural project. I delivered a speech that was spontaneous and unrehearsed. I mentioned taking back space, about the influence of art, about how quiet, misinterpreted as tranquility, may be burdensome. A man in his 60s came over to me after the clapping. He said, I saw your interview. He was referring to the PBS interview. Your words brought to mind my daughter. She also left our family, and up until now, I've never fully understood why. I gave a nod. Those who harm us don't always change. However, strangers do occasionally. Soon later, I moved into my new residence. It wasn't really impressive. It was bright, though. There is a bookcase everywhere. Every windowsill has a plant. While I worked, there were paint streaks on the kitchen counter and background music. Unless I invited them, nobody entered the house. And I wasn't lonely for the first time in my life. Yes, I was alone, but in the most advantageous manner. The kind of solitude that is akin to a fresh start. Like the potential. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail one day. My mum was the one. Once more. She claimed that the apple pie she was making made her think of me. She expressed her hope that we would all be able to forget the past one day. I didn't chuckle. I refrained from crying. For a time, I just looked at the wall and said to myself, I haven't forgotten. I simply moved on. I didn't return the call, because re-entry isn't usually the result of forgiveness. Sometimes it entails carefully shutting the door and deciding not to open it again, even in the presence of pie. Later that evening, I watched the wind sweep the first autumn leaves across the grass while sipping coffee on my new porch. I had lost my anger. Simply remained motionless, complete, and I came to the realization that I wasn't broken by them. I merely learned how to rebuild from them, starting from the beginning. Not with them. I no longer think about them on a daily basis. I occasionally think back to my early Sunday mornings when I walk by a bakery with cinnamon in the air. My mother's hands were covered in flour. Like she was meant to be loved, Lily dances around the kitchen. I get a tinge of something sometimes. It's not pain, though. It's distance, and there is now peace. I still occasionally see them. In family pictures that circulate during the holidays, I often come across posts from cousins I no longer communicate with on social media. Sometimes I'll be marked in an old recollection, but I'm always in the background, never really at the center. And that's fine with me. To know I existed, I don't have to be in the picture. Their captions don't have to explain my value. I live a calm life now. It's the kind of silence that envelops you like a cozy blanket on a wet day, rather than the oppressive silence of unsaid things. My home studio is where I work. I'm a painter. Workshops are what I teach. I give talks at small events about the therapeutic value of storytelling, art, and taking back your space. Afterwards, I occasionally get approached by young women who say, I think I'm in that same place you used to be. I give them a direct look and say, then you're halfway out already. I've gained new acquaintances, actual ones, people that don't ask for anything when they call, only to say hello. People who don't retreat into their fears while celebrating my victories. People who can shine without me having to be silent. And on calm mornings, a certain person, someone patient, kind, sits next to me and reads while I paint. In those times, we don't talk much. We don't have to. They are aware that our quiet is not hurting us. It's a house. Since that last communication, I have not spoken to my mother. Once, she sent a birthday card. It was late. Just her name was signed. No affection, no I miss you. Just being formal, I put it inside a drawer. Not with resentment. On the days when I question whether I dreamed the entire affair, I want to tell myself that I didn't. Not every story needs to be told again. There are doors that close softly. And keep your mouth shut. I've heard that Lily is doing well. She lands softly every time. I don't mean any damage to her. However, I also no longer want to be close to her. There are connections that can only be sustained at a distance. And that's all right. The home? Mine yet. I left it bare for a time. Just out of need. Not out of resentment. I wanted the air to escape. To rebreathe. To be more than the location where I was reduced in size. I eventually made renovations to it. Created a gallery area in the living room. The bedrooms upstairs serve as creative havens for visiting artists. Local women organize cultural food nights in the kitchen, which has been transformed into a communal cooking space. It's more than simply a house now. It is a place of healing, of fresh starts, of preference. And me? I'm not flawless. I still question myself on some days. The same need to apologize before I've done anything wrong is still there. Then I take a breath and think of the girl who used to make herself smaller so she could fit the shapes that other people made for her. She is no longer present. She is replaced by a lady who, even in solitude, carries herself with dignity, particularly when she is by herself. I didn't receive the appropriate apology. However, I provided myself with the necessary closure. And that was sufficient. Because sometimes leaving is the most effective thing you can do. Not out of rage. Not with fireworks. But with elegance. Clearly. Additionally, you may rest easy knowing that you are no longer waiting to be selected. You made your own decision already. Let me tell you something: if you've ever felt excluded, silenced, or like the odd one out, you're not too much. You don't cause trouble. You're not invisible. You still have a big, amazing story to tell. Furthermore, you don't require another person to tell you the story. Put it in your own words. With pride, frame it. And hang it in the best lit area. Because of you, you were art all along. Simply put, they weren't looking.